Inshallah, when I will be here, I will join again, inshallah.
Tonight?
No, I am leaving today, Hazur.
Oh, sure.
Yes,
I'm
indeed.
sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we start, please?
So today we have three persons panel from different countries. From Holland. The next is Mr. Zoltan Uhrin from Hungary.
From Hungary?
Yes.
Yes.
This is the first time that we have
Yes.
we are going to have a Hungarian friend with us
Yes.
today. Yes.
Yes. The third one is Mrs. Sheila Hill from Guyana.
From Guyana.
Guyana.
Right, right. Is it your first time that you are coming to this? No, I've seen you
Yes.
before. Right, right.
So if you permit me, I would like to present first question sent by one non-Muslim friend.
Yes.
He says that why does God allow man to commit sins and transgressions?
God, the question is not rightly framed, but it gives the impression that God intended man to commit sin, and that is why he permitted him. This question can only be understood if we realize if God had not permitted, what would happen? Then angels were there, didn't commit any sins. The animals prior to the creation of man were there without committing any sins. Why create man at all? Why add unnecessarily to the list of the creations who do not commit sins, which is sufficient? But why do they not commit sin? This is the question. Because they are not capable of. So their innocence is without value. Anyone who is not capable of seeing things, if he claims, you see, I am very innocent, I don't cast greedy looks on things or on people, at people or upon people, whatever you say. Anyone can say because you have no sight, no problem. But if anybody can see things and then he is cautious enough to guard one's looks, his looks, then of course that is something laudable and praiseworthy, and also can earn reward in certain situations. So the question is that of choice or no choice. That's the simple question. Would he rather not be than be given a choice? The moment you give choice, it opens two paths for you, either this or that. And there the freedom of choice makes you responsible for your errors which you commit, and makes you worthy of rewards which you earn by taking the right course. Got it?
Yes. I have one question, Hazur.
Yes.
Time has been created by Allah. It is a sequence of events in the present universe. Will time therefore cease to exist after the day of judgment?
What is time? You have not defined it.
Well, I was thinking it is a sequence of events in this present creation.
You see, stillness is both death and timelessness. In those things which must survive with some movement within or outside. When they become still, that is called death and also timelessness. But timelessness of the living, when they become dead, is only, in relative terms, because something goes on changing. The dead body begins to disintegrate. The soul, in the view of those who believe in the soul, also makes progress of some sort which we do not know. So the change is time. The time is the recording mechanism of change. So if you believe that after resurrection there will be no change, then time would stand still. But according to the Holy Quran, the change is going to be continuous. First of all, immediately after our death, our soul will undergo a gradual, slow transformation from a lower order of existence to a higher order of existence. So time can only stop in relation to God because there is no change within Him. And as such, He cannot be likened unto other things. That is why the Holy Quran emphasizes this. There is none like Him. Because if there are others who could live without a change, then there will be not one God but many. So His being one is also to be understood in the sense that He owns attributes which cannot be shared by any one of the known things in creation. It is impossible for you to conceive anything which is created to be timeless. And the very creation means time, which means it was not there and it is now there. So the time begins like the watch which you have stopped, you press it to action again and it begins to tick. So the creation means time. Right?
Yes.
Thank you.
My first question is why Muslim men and women mustn't be together in parties?
You are there together with the lady sitting next to you?
But for example,
you are not a Muslim?
no.
No, that's all right then. No. You see, it is not forbidden for men and women to be together in party in public. There is no law restricting men and women to be together in public. So what is forbidden is to see each other in private, in camera, so that they may be misled because of the natural attraction of man to woman, woman to man. Islam is a very organized and scientifically advanced religion. All Islamic injunctions are based on profound wisdom. If you look at the social disorder of the world today and go deeper into things, causes which created that social disorder, you have to reach the conclusion that promiscuity or freedom of meeting men with women and women with men is all that has created this. To begin with, it seems very simple and innocent. You go in a ballroom or sit in a place, touching each other, sometimes half embracing each other, dancing with each other, and this generates desires which are bound to go beyond your control. Then the following steps become a natural consequence of this situation. And according to human psyche, if you achieve your object of love or object of desire and stay put there, and it is again the question of time which comes in, then the time will cease to pass for your emotions and excitement. And then the thing becomes boring. If the desire is carnal, if the desire is of a baser order, then after a while you just become commonplace to each other. Then you want some change, you want some better person, more exciting, with greater kick. So you go on changing partners even before marriage. And when you go on changing partners before marriage, it is very difficult indeed to remain loyal to each other after marriage. So all the breakdown of family system here and there, everywhere in Europe and America, and also in the Eastern countries nowadays, because they do not lag far behind in sexual transgression. Now this has resulted into a situation where nature has taken into its own hands the punishment of these violations, where aids come to punish you, where herpes, which is sex-related herpes, it has been created to punish man only for sexual offences. Now this is a very strange thing, because there are certain diseases which are designed particularly with a purpose to punish only those who violate sex laws created by God, and they remain confined to these areas. No such precautions are taken with regard to any other disease, that they must remain confined to a particular sin. Otherwise disease is let loose in the air, in the earth, in water, and without your committing any crime you can catch the disease. So that means that is a different phenomenon. It's not punishment. It's a completely different phenomenon. But in cases of sex-related diseases like gonorrhea, like syphilis, like herpes, like AIDS, special care is taken that this will only inflict those who commit this crime. So there is a design in nature, and this ultimate end, or the tragic end, is what is being prevented by such preventive measures. Do not do this, do not do that. And if you confine within the dictates of divine teachings, or particularly Islamic teaching is very elaborate and highly advanced, then to begin with you think you will be bored by this confinement and the life will become empty of pleasure and meaning. But on the other hand, if you realize that you are comparing a life of freedom from the vantage point of people who can do this and do that, but if they can project themselves to a life of discipline, then they would realize that their pleasure is far more guaranteed and it becomes peaceful than the pleasure of a free society. The homes are then rebuilt with a sense of responsibility and security. When every member of the home is not permitted to go out to seek his own personal or her own personal pleasure, the family ties begin to grow from there. And then you begin to realize that the pleasure does not belong only to sex. It's a pleasure of friendship, the pleasure of close relationship, blood relationship, sister, the love of sister, between love and the love between sister and brother, mother and daughter, and father and daughter, and so on and so forth. They all become suddenly rewarding. Previously, if you are drawn powerfully in the one direction of changing sex, these pleasures gradually lose importance. So the family breaks, the break of the family is reassured, apart from other factors which I have told. Then these things are of no value, not much value anyway. Then when the parents grow old in one's house, nobody cares. Each one has his own pleasure-chasing responsibilities. So the Quranic teaching is a very profound and wise teaching, which is founded on Islamic human nature. So I could say a lot more on this, but I think because of the shortage of time, and some others may like to inquire other questions, we should leave it at that. Okay? Thank you very much. from Guyana.
From Guyana. What is the reason why you celebrate Eid?
Eid.
Yes.
You see, this, to celebrate is in man, in human nature. Because it has nothing to do with religion alone. Everywhere man has celebrated, whether he believes or does not believe. So celebration is a natural urge in man to relax and for a while forget the responsibilities and the burdens of daily life and retire into an atmosphere where you are so, everybody is so jolly and happy, everybody is being fed and clothed as best as he would desire. So this is the philosophy of celebration. One can't afford such life every day. It's impossible. So people have designed certain days and fixed them in the year that all light will celebrate on that and that day. Most often the celebrations have direct link with the seasons, because with seasons come fruits. And every spring, for instance, there are certain fruits, certain harvests which are gathered, and there is, wheat harvest festival, and at the end of the year, people enjoy the festival of harvesting rice and so on and so forth in many countries. So most often the celebration is related to harvests, when you are going to have the fruit of your labor. For 6 months or less or more, the farmers go to the field and put in hard labor to grow something, and when it ripens ultimately, when they gather the fruit of their labor, naturally this is the most opportune moment, most wise decision to celebrate this. So it all began with this. As far as we know the history of celebrations, they were all related to harvest periods, and all the Christian celebrations are also attached to this harvest. For instance, nowadays Easter is about to come. This was a pagan custom of enjoying the harvest season of the spring, which ultimately got converted into Christian or Jewish celebrations. Similarly, the Christmas is in fact is a legacy of some pagan festivals who used to celebrate, in this case, not harvest, but the birth of their so-called God Son. So this is the second thing which has created celebrations. Religious beliefs and religious myths, etc., which give importance to one day, any particular day. So because the day becomes important in the mind of the people, to celebrate becomes a sort of homage to the person for whom you are celebrating that day. So some goddess was paid this homage by the Romans during Christmas time, and by celebrating and eating, they also made offerings at the temples, and they thought the sun goddess would be pleased. So during their offerings, they also enjoyed extra special food, extra special dresses and dancing and this and that. This was taken over by the Christians, particularly under St. Paul's policies, because he wanted to win the Romans to Christianity. So he adopted their days of celebration and mingle Christian ideology with their myths, so that Christianity appeared to them to be their own something they known in the history for ages. So these are the two major factors for the day of celebration. Eid in Islam as an extra reason why it is celebrated, which is not found in the first two reasons I have mentioned. Each celebration is the celebration of man's purity, because it happens after Ramadan. In Ramadan is the month of fasting, month of worshipping God like you never worshipped Him in other months. So day in and day out, you read the Quran, you worship God, you remember Him, and you try to purify yourself with relation to your past history. You try to shed some sins, some bad habits, and acquire at least a new partial life, if not entire life. So it is a spiritual rebirth which the Muslims celebrate at the time of Eid, or supposedly a spiritual rebirth. Why supposedly? Because when people move away from the sources of their religion, their meaningful practices become mere rites of show and display. There is no meaning left into the practices, like an empty bottle which is not filled with milk or wine. So these celebrations become empty of the spirit of what they are celebrated for. So the sense is exactly as I have just mentioned to you. After passing through a month of hard labor in the cause of Allah to win His favor and to emerge from the Ramadan as a better person, what you celebrate is this transformation, this change. Right.
I have a second question, Hazur. If a father has a large plot of land, and if he has some
large plot of land,
large plot of land, and if he has some children, then these children will inherit a part of the land. Each of them will have a part of the land.
right?
Then if these children again will have children, they also on their turn will have again a smaller part of the land.
That's right.
Etc. It will continue.
It will continue to divide.
Yeah. So ultimately, after a few generations, if a child will be left with perhaps a few square millimeters, inches.
Yes.
Yes. What is Hazur's view to this?
But because in real life such mathematical calculations do not work. So this is not what's going to happen.
I see. Yeah.
The fact is that you have visualized these multiplying families to remain completely idle without adding to the property. While what happens is that many often the property left to some children by their parents is increased many folds than what they inherited. The result is that their children inherit much more than their father did. And this is a common day-to-day observation. And the vice versa is also true. Sometimes rich parents leave large legacies, huge properties, and the children are indolent and lazy and worthless, so they eat the property up and leave practically nothing for their children. This is what happens in real life. So these mathematical calculations do not work there.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Please.
My question is simple. Why don't men shake hands with ladies?
For the same reason. Yes, I will explain.
Yeah.
Because it is a touch which passes some currents from one body to the other, and it happens in a manner that nobody can notice. No words are exchanged. So when you shake hands with people, you must notice, remember, that sometimes you shake hands with aversion and loathsomeness, like this, touch and go, and you don't like it, and this feeling of aversion is transferred. Everybody knows that he has been insulted. His handshake was not welcome. And sometimes you remain neutral. It's a general exchange of greetings and that's all. And sometimes you press it in a manner as to indicate your special love for that person. So things which you could not say in public, you say by the movement and the pressure of the hand. So when private meetings are forbidden for this, lest the romances begin to grow and exchange between people and people, this also is a factor. And secondly, shake hand is not forbidden between man and woman as such. In family circles, between brother and sister, mother and daughter and sons, etc., the shake hand is a daily practice. So to shake hand with a woman in itself is not forbidden. It is forbidden to, lest this shake hand should encourage some evil intentions among humans, which are always there, because the sexual urges are, according to the psychologists, the strongest motive forces after the force of the desire to survive by eating. This is the most powerful force in man. So if it is well organized, then short-circuiting will not take place. If it is left to chance, then it is bound to result in explosions and untoward things. So present at the right moment. Now we, in Muslim society, we do not shake hands with unknown ladies who are outside the para family, and it doesn't hurt us at all. Nor does it hurt the women, because they are used to it. Just a nod and that's enough. It hurts only those who have got used to touching others and enjoying some. So they feel this is an unwelcome restriction on their freedom. But this unwelcome restriction on their freedom is for their own ultimate advantage. Okay?
Thank you.
Please. Thank you.
Yes. I was always brought up to believe that Christ died on a cross. I would like to know your reason.
You believe that Jesus Christ died upon cross?
Yes, I was always brought up to believe that.
Do you believe that he was not true?
But I understand that you don't believe that in the Muslim faith.
No, I am asking you a counter question. Do you believe that Jesus Christ was not true? Was he true?
Was he a true man? Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
And was he a holy man?
Yes.
Of course. Did God love him?
Yes.
Right? And did he offer the sacrifice himself? With volition? Willingly?
Yes, he did. He said,
Okay. This having been established, let's turn to the night before the crucifixion. What did Jesus Christ do that night?
what did he do?
All night he prayed, sobbing, crying, "Oh God the Father, take away this cup from me." Did he not? And when his disciples who were with him, some of them slept, he rebuked them. Is this the time for sleeping? Get up and pray to God so that he can take away this crisis from me, this bitter trial from me. Where is the willingness? If he had done it himself. And he kept crying the whole night. He must have received a promise from God that your prayers are heard and you will be saved from death upon cross. If he had not received this message from God, why did he exclaim at the end when he thought he was about to die, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani? Oh God, have you abandoned me? If death was so welcome, if it was a volition, if knew exactly what he was expecting, if God had not accepted his prayers, where is the sense of making this exclamation and protest? Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. So read these things together, and the only sensible conclusion you can draw will be the conclusion which any will draw from this. He was a holy man. He did not willingly offer his own life for any sake. He prayed the whole night for God not to shun the sacrifices involved, not at all, but to shun the cursed death upon cross, for the fear that people will be misled. Because it was written in the Old Testament that anyone who is an impostor, he will hang by the tree. So this is applied to Jesus Christ with a twist by the Christians nowadays, but the message is very clear. Anybody who claims to be from God and is not from God, he will die upon cross. So if he died upon cross, his truth would be jeopardized. The belief in Jesus Christ would be jeopardized. I believe that was the reason he was praying. Otherwise, prophets of Allah do not run away from sacrifices. And that is why his prayer was heard. That is why there is no proof whatsoever that Jesus died upon cross. The only proof which we know from the Old Testament is that after 3 days he is seen alive, walking, keep putting his hand on the shoulder of some two companions, walking out of the same sepulchre where he was kept after the crucifixion. He showed the signs of wounds. Now 3 days after that, if a wounded man is seen walking out, what is the message delivered? That he was true when he said that I will be saved. So it is not just the experience of the night before and the last cry of Jesus on crucifixion which I am referring to. I refer you to a promise which he made to a people who wanted some signs. He said, no sign will be shown unto you except the sign of Jonah. What was the sign of Jonah? He remained for 3 days and nights in the belly of fish, according to the tale as it goes, alive, not dead. He came out of the belly alive. That was the sign. So under circumstances where death was far more probable, he would be miraculously saved by God and rescued from that probable death. This was the prophecy. So when you see him walking out after 3 nights or 3 days, you immediately remember that this is what he had himself said. Now, if it happens today, what would be the inference drawn by anyone? That somebody died and then got resurrected? Or he never died? So, apply your mind and understand the verdict of, not history, the verdict of the New Testament itself. As I have explained things. And only sensible conclusion to be drawn is that Jesus was saved from death upon crucifixion. And corroborating signs are that when his side was pierced, blood gushed out, blood and water. while the corpses do not bleed. Only a thin, something like a mixture of plasma and water that may slightly seep out, but not blood and water separately. Blood and water can only gush out of the body when the heart is beating, and then because of some injury, for instance, the pleurisy can result from the injury of crucifixion, and because of that, obviously when it is pierced, that sac in which, because of pleurisy, water is collected and also blood. So what will happen when that sac is burst by the penetration of the spear? It would burst open and something would gush out. That's very important. And if he is alive, blood will gush out and water will gush out. So all the corroborating evidence is in favor of that. When the Jews frantically tried to find his corpse and they could not lower their hands to the corpse, they went to Pilate, protesting. And do you remember what they said? They said, we must have his corpse. It should be handed over to us. Because he was, God forbid, a crooked man, and he may not have died. He may walk free later on and say, look here, this is a miracle. I risen from the dead. So why this suspicion? That means the situation in which he is supposed to have died did not warrant definite death. He hung upon the cross hardly for 3 hours because the crucifixion took place during the days of the fall, when the days and nights are about equal, and in the afternoon there is very little time left for the period time of crucifixion and the time of the sunset. So in the afternoon of a Friday, he could have hung on cross hardly for 3 hours or so, even for 4 hours, because before the sunset, according to the Jewish law, which was respected by the Roman Empire, no person was permitted to hang upon the cross. It had to be taken down. And then the legs were broken. Now, it did not happen in case of Jesus Christ that his legs were broken, but he hung only for 3 to 4 hours, while normally crucifixion took 3 days for making the death certain of the person who hangs upon it. Is there no difference between 3 hours and 3 days? The likelihood is far more of the survival of such people who hang only for a few hours. That is why it was the practice that the legs were also broken. Jesus' legs were spared, they were not broken. Despite the fact that the penetration of the spear, caused the blood to come out. So there must have been some sympathetic influence on the people who were guarding his body, or fear of God maybe. Maybe they had the realization that this is a holy man, definitely. And then Joseph Ardita was a very influential person. He was a friend of Pilate. He is known, according to the New Testament, to have met Pilate and demanded for the body of Jesus Christ. And he was a very influential person. A friend of the government has to be a very influential person. And when pilot granted him this request, you know what he said? Already dead? You want for the corpse? He was amazed. And a very experienced executor who had ordered the death by crucifixion of so many, and he's amazed to hear that he's already dead in mere 3 to 4 hours. And Joseph did not argue the matter, but he received the permission and produced it at the place of crucifixion and got the possession of the body, which means that those soldiers standing guard over the crucifixion, etc., they must have known that this is a very influential person and this is a special person for whom they are doing it, and Pilate has gone out of his way to issue a certificate so quickly and so soon against the normal custom. So these things must have been there. There must have been the knowledge that something is happening to this particular man. So that is why the legs were not broken. So even if he were in a swoon, which he very likely was, then you can't call it death. And if the legs are not broken, although he appeared to be dead to the people, I mean, if you believe in that possible scenario, that the soldiers did not do any favor to him, but they really believed that he was dead, even then legs may not have been broken because of that. Either way, it is possible, because legs were broken in case where the guards thought there was a risk of this person living. In case of Jesus, either the swoon was so complete that he was in a state of coma which was unrecognizable, or these influences which I have mentioned. Whatever happened, his legs were not broken. And the probability of survival is increased manifold because of this factor as well. Right? Thank you.
I have one more question as well.
Please, welcome.
Can 2 rakat nafil be said at any time, or are there certain parts of the day during which they should not be said?
As far as nafil means voluntary prayers. You are not familiar with Islamic system of worship, are you? I am asking you.
Pardon?
You are not familiar with the Islamic custom of worship, how they worship.
Yeah. No.
Have you ever seen any Muslim praying in a mosque or outside anywhere?
Yes.
Well, you know, they stand out.
Yes.
So we have 5 obligatory prayers every day. We have to perform prayer 5 times a day. But it is required of Muslims optionally to say more prayers than just the 5 times. So those prayers are said in 2 rakat, we call it. You stand up, prostrate, and 1 rakat is completed. Then you stand up again, and the second rakat begins. So that is why he inquired from me about the 2 rakat, because these optional prayers are generally done in groups of 2 rakat. So the question is, can we say optional prayers any time of the day, or is there any restriction to it? Now you understand the question? Good.
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is that there are 2 times in which every prayer, optional or non-optional, is absolutely forbidden. 3 times. One when the sun is rising, the other when the sun is setting, and the third when it is at zenith. At the very top. Yes. Because of the sun worship. protest against sun worship, a sort of preventive measure against any possible, respect for the sun. The worship at these times, which was generally carried out by the sun worshippers, is forbidden totally in Islam. Right? In all other times, nawafil, which is the optional prayers, is permissible, except, all prayers are permissible except for nawafil. This optional prayer is also not permissible between asr, that is the afternoon prayer, and the maghrib prayer, which is said after the sunset. So this evening gap is a gap in which nawafil are strongly discouraged. You shouldn't say any nawafil during that period. Why? Because that is the time everywhere in the world for people to go out for loitering, for playing. Games are held most often than not in the time between Asr and Maghrib, between the afternoon and sunset. So Islam has gone into such detail of human habits and practices to keep them in view in religious instructions as well. It's a time not for praying, not formally praying. At least have some time for yourself and your children to go out and loiter in the open, and that is exactly what nature does at that time. The birds begin to fly freely and sing again. They come out of their hideouts and make themselves visible and hearable. So that is in tune with the natural phenomenon of the whole world.
I have no question.
You have some question?
The lady from Guyana.
From Guyana. I did have one about the fasting, but I think asking about Eid seemed to cover, because it seems like it's a celebration after fasting.
After fasting?
Yeah.
Haven't I explained already?
That's what I'm saying, because I thought Eid and fasting was two different sort of.
Eids.
Yeah.
And the second Eid is the celebration of deliverance of God from human sacrifice. When Hazrat Abraham ﷺ was told by God to sacrifice his own son, because in the previous days it was a common practice in many religions to offer human sacrifices as well, by killing people, slaughtering them. So he thought, maybe Allah wants this from me. But at the same time he had his own doubts. So he kept on fulfilling this dream in the sense that he sacrificed his son by removing him from his this home in which Abraham himself lived, and leading him to a desert like the desert of Arabia in the vicinity of Mecca, which was not there now at that time. In the vicinity, I should have said, of the ruins of the first house of God which was ever built according to the Quran. So he did everything to satisfy his conscience by offering one sacrifice and another, and believing that I have fulfilled the dream. The message of the dream is now carried out. Yet he waited until the son grew to the age of decision making. And this is a great tribute to the wisdom of Abraham. Even if it were human sacrifice, which was literally meant, Abraham knew that it was impossible for God to permit one person to take every person's life. This much he was certain. that even if it is human sacrifice, it has to be done with the permission of the person who is going to be slaughtered for God. That is why he waited that long. And in the end, he took his son away and inquired from him. He said, "Oh, my dear son, this is what I see in dreams. And perhaps this is the intention of God, to literally slaughter you. What is your opinion?" He said, "Yes, I'm ready." So he was about to be slaughtered when God so managed, ordained that a wild, was it a sheep? No, goat.
Ram.
Lamb, it was lamb, not a goat. But whatever it was, whether lamb or goat, got caught in the bush, got strangled in the bush. And God said to Abraham, "You have fulfilled your obligation. This boy is not to be sacrificed. Sacrifice that goat instead." So that was a day when the human sacrifice, voluntary or obligatory, in every sort, every form of it, was forbidden forever. So a deliverance from this and a deliverance from ignorance, a transfer from dark ages of ignorance to the ages of light, is something which does require celebration, does it not? To remember that day, and also to pray for Abraham and his son, who were ready to offer everything for the sake of God. So this is the philosophy of the second Eid which we celebrate, and we celebrate it by slaughtering goats or sheep or other animals the flesh of which we eat. Any animal up to a camel can be sacrificed. To celebrate that day in that way is not all the celebration about it. Before that, for days together, people gather around the house of God, and from morning till evening, from evening to late in night, they extol His name and praise Him and play and sing His glories. So the manner in which the real celebration is made is this manner of Hajj. Right? Thank you. Now what about Guyana? I've been there.
You've been?
Of course.
Ah.
I met your president, who it was. I met your prime minister, and also I must express my gratitude the way they especially treated me. Television caught the meeting, scenes and displayed it on national television and so on. But that is not just to exult in what happened. I want to convey to you that I have seen the Guyanian society at the highest level as well as the lowest level, at the grassroots level. Most of my time was spent with Guyanian people, not only Ahmadis, but all Guyanese from different walks of life. We had sessions together, free exchange of views. So within a very short time, I understood what Guyana was, and its history, its religious, political background, and the present complex of their political life. I was amazed to discover that most of the Ghanaians are of African origin. But that area, which is of African origin, is not so strongly developed and made accessible as that area where non-Africans perhaps make the majority, of Indian origin and that origin and that origin. So they are left alone while they make the a big majority. And even to reach them is so difficult, because you have to fly to cover long distances between the capital and the places where mostly the original Afro-Americans live, Afro-Ghanaians live. So they cannot participate in the government as they should. I mean, the proportion of the representation maybe nominally maybe in the parliaments, but practically they're ousted from power. And they're just Christians in name, no more. And that's what the West wants. So that is what I wanted to impress upon you, the fact that their interest in you of the Western world is not in your soul. It is wrong that they claim that they came to liberate your souls. They came to bind you hand and foot in economic and political ties. This is exactly what they have done. So the liberation of soul concept is just totally meaningless. And it's a tribute to your simplicity and naivety. The greatest tribute to your simplicity, that you believed in that. When they said, when after, in the wake of the political conquerors and economic invaders, the church elders came, the priests came. The message they deliver to you is, don't bother about these political ties or economic ties. We have come to liberate you, but only your spirits, not your bodies. And you are so simple a people that you accepted it. And when you started behaving in a manner that spiritual advantage was already lost, you did not pay any tribute to Jesus Christ except the lip service. You ceased to live His life. You ceased to remain chaste. You lost yourself and drowned yourself in drinking, dancing, singing, and that was all the Christianity which you understood, failing to do anything. And you did not even then realize that why these priests do not come to us again. Why don't they tell us, we try to liberate your souls, you have chained your souls against yourself and offer yourself as a prisoner to the devil. So you should wake up and realize these things. You are duped. You are living in a closed shell. You don't know what's happening to you, why you did this and why did you do that. Don't take any pride in the fact that in the country where you live, the religion of the government and the local people is the same as yours. That religion can never remove the barrier of racial differences. Do whatever you may. You can dance yourself to death, drink yourself to total madness, and yet you will not be treated as equal partners in life with the Christians of this country. Is that right or wrong?
No, we're not treated as equal, but I think in all societies there is that, even among...
The point is, so what have you gained? Nothing. If you have been made into a very pious people like Jesus Christ and His people were, if the crime had been wiped out totally from the Ghanaian life, if sense of responsibility had grown, then of course that would be a gain. Call yourself Christian or anything. If there were a definite practical change in your life which can be declared as reformation, then the name of religion no longer matter much. If the society is reformed, this is the purpose of religion. if you have not gained that advantage, why do you shut your eyes to this and spend your life in a state of slumber? Please wake up and begin seriously to examine the Christian doctrines versus the other doctrines and Islam more seriously than ever before. Thank you. It's a passionate message, it's not a criticism. I really feel that this is a message which must be delivered. And we are doing it in African countries with amazing success. Right? Thank you. And it's time, I think.
Yes.
Time is over, huh?
Yes.
Well, thank you, and I hope you don't mind this open and frank criticism as it appears to be criticism. It is not. I am motivated only by a sense of responsibility towards you. I think this is a message which has to be delivered. And no word should be chewed in this, because it must be delivered home. Right? I hope you don't mind. Good, thank you.